Some people just can't handle change.
Hi everybody, this is Black Runner Ranger. Now let's talk about a tricky subject I want to bring up. Change. It happens. It happens to pretty much every single one of us. It happened when we started on this earth as bacterial miniature creatures, and later fish, amphibians, reptiles, mammals, primates, cavemen, and now us. Even in the more recent times, some things often change. The economy changes, you discover new things in your life, you learn new technology and learning things, etc. However, that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm talking about change within cartoons. Back in July this year, I made a fan art about one of the Loud House characters, Lenny Loud, being all by herself. This was made in response to the fact that the Loud House is going to go through a big change in Season 5. All the Louds will age up by 1 year, and Lori Loud is leaving for college. I wonder if Luna's change will be something like this when she reaches 16, the same age as Lenny. Shortly after posting the image, I got a comment from a guy who said he's not happy with this. He wishes that the Louds should keep to the same age. But I also remember in the Mysterious Mr. Enter's Top 11 Worst Animation Cliches is that in the Dishonorable Mentions category, he put refusing to age your characters as one of them, saying that while it does have its benefit, it also has its weaknesses. And the biggest weakness is that if your show runs for a long time, if your character keeps to the same age, the show becomes more of a zombie. I'll talk more about that later, but for now, I'll say if you age up a character, at least you are giving that character something new to discover and going through some changes. If you ask me, I can see both of the arguments making a good point. On one hand, sure, aging the characters can be a problem. Changing something for a show is a risk. Take Pinkie and the Brain, for instance. It was a perfect spin-off to Animaniacs. At one point, they did poke fun of executive medley and unnecessary changes to the shows in the episodes Pinkie and the Brain, and Larry, and You'll Never Eat Food Pellets in This Town Again. But then, thanks to some real executive meddling, they were forced to team up with Tiny Toon Adventures regular Elmyra, thus giving us Pinkie, Elmyra, and the Brain. This change was met with backlash from fans. Even the writers themselves weren't pleased with it. This is confirmed in the theme song.
Now Pinkie and the Brain share a new domain. It's what the network wants. Why bother to complain?
But on the other hand, not having the characters age can also be a problem. Take The Simpsons, for instance. Because there are nearly 700 episodes from 1989 to present, you know something's not right. Lisa, Bart, and Maggie kept the same age, and yet as the years go by, it seems technology has grown a lot faster than them. There was even an episode called That 90s Show, which is said to be the biggest retcon of the entire Simpsons history. Do I even have to mention all those future episodes? Bart's voice never got deepened, and because the show has a status quo, those future versions of Bart, Lisa, and Maggie are never going to be permanent. And at worst, those future episodes become, dated. Family Guy and Fairly OddParents perhaps had it at worst. The characters never changed, and the only big change Fairly OddParents had was adding new recurring characters every season, like Poof, Sparky, and Chloe, and that's when the show got extremely rotten, more so than SpongeBob. Poof was fine, but the rest, eh. As for Family Guy, they got a lot worse by their comedy. More often or not, they are desperate to either want to make the audience laugh or be shocked by all the disturbing, disgusting, racist, sexist, and anything offensive ways of comedy, and almost none of them work. There are some shows I can think of that are really good and are always constantly changing, like Bojack Horseman. Every single episode, a change happens, and it always stays that way. When someone gets hurt, they stay hurt. When something is broken, it stays broken. The Hollywood sign was missing a D in one episode, but every episode after that, that D is still missing. And people now call it Hollywood. That's one of the many reasons why the show is so well beloved. Change is risky, especially in the cartoon, but it's nature. Everyone has to move on sooner or later. Even some of the writers of the Loud House are moving on to other projects. It can lead to new opportunities for story, development, and even fresher laughs. Sometimes, however, a change can lead to either a mixed bag or have the audience entirely polarized. The best example I can think of is Ed, Edd and Eddy. That season is divided amongst fans. Some didn't mind the change and thought it could add something new for the formula of the show, while others trashed it for saying it doesn't feel like Ed, Edd and Eddy, and the scenarios they pulled off aren't as charming as the previous seasons. Staying the same can also be a mixed bag, like Spongebob Squarepants. The show overall has become a polarizing show. Some still love the show today like they did in the past. Others did like the show in its earlier years but got bored of the later seasons. And I even know a few people who are so ticked off of the later seasons that they want nothing to do with SpongeBob anymore, even in its earlier seasons. There's also Big Mouth, which some people like and some people don't like, and it's a show about changing. I don't know what to say about that show because even though I am in my 20s, my folks keep asking me to stop watching it because they felt too uncomfortable when seeing me watch it. When it comes to shows based on toy brands, they do make changes within the same show, like My Little Pony and Transformers. But this is not because the crew desired to make the change, it was requested by the toy company who owns the show, like Hasbro. It's mainly because they want to keep the interest for viewers and buyers up. For example, Twilight Sparkle getting wings in the Friendship is Magic episode, The Magical Mystery Cure. That was included because, perhaps not because one of the staff wanted Twilight Sparkle to become an alicorn, it was requested by Hasbro because they had plans to sell Twilight alicorn toys. Here's another example, G1 Transformers. Like most shows of the 80s, each episode was meant as a 22-minute toy commercial to sell you toys. There's an article about both Transformers wikis called To Sell Toys if you want a better understanding about this. But I'll give you an example of what I mean. The Transformers has a large cast of characters. In the 3-part opener, More Than Meets the Eye, it introduces 18 Autobots and about over a dozen Decepticons. Later in the same season, they would introduce more Transformers, and to be fair, they at least let you know how they came to be. Skyfire, nowadays known as Jetfire, was frozen for millions of years until the Decepticons discovered him. They tried to recruit him, but due to his good-hearted nature, he betrayed them and became an Autobot. The Dinobots were created by the Autobots because they had a sudden fascination for dinosaurs. The Insecticons came from an escaped pod from the Decepticon ship. However, in some episodes, especially in Season 2, the movie, and Season 4, they introduced new characters completely out of nowhere, like Powerglide, Perceptor, Warpath, Trax, Hot Rod, Ultra Magnus, RC, Cup, the Headmasters, the Target Masters, etc. Sometimes they would get killed off like the movie had the deaths of Brawn, Prowl, Ironhide, Ratchet, Windcharger, and Wheeljack, and the most infamous of them all, Optimus Prime. This is because the Hasbro wanted to make room for more screen time for the newcomers in order to sell toys. Not only that, but Season 3 had a darkening tone compared to the previous seasons. Beast Wars was more of a creator-driven type of show, but even that needed to take notes from its owner. Now, because back in the 90s, CGI was still in its infancy, I can imagine how frustrating it was to make that show, especially with its limitations, time consumption, and expenses. Which is why instead of dozens of Maximals and Predacons like originally planned, the show started with just 5 Maximals and 5 Predacons, and it could only introduce newcomers sparingly. When Season 2 kicked in, that's when they needed to do some big changes. Hasbro demanded a lot of big changes, like more characters and new designs for pre-existers. In order to get around the limitations and keep costs down, they had to kill off some characters in order to make room for new ones. For example, Pterosaur and Scorponok got killed off in the first Season 2 episode, and in the episode after that, Quickstrike and Silverbolt got introduced. Not only that, but some of the Transformers got a Transportal upgrade, but not all of them did, despite the toys, because of the limitations. The only death of which was written as desired from the crew was Dinobot's death in Code of Hero. This wasn't requested by Hasbro, it was something the writers themselves added in by passion. Also, since Hasbro is a toy company, if the sales or ratings start to drop from either the show or toys, they would need to make some changes in order to stay fresh and keep the viewers and buyers interested. Which means they would need to cancel their current lineups and make room for either a reboot like Transformers Prime and Animated, or a new continuation like Beast Wars, Beast Machines, and the Unicron trilogy, and to sell more new toys. Whether you like change or not, if you're working for a show like this, even creating it, you have no choice but to make these changes. Again, this is not your decision, it's the toy company's. Where do I stand on cartoons making changes? For me, I am very split. Maybe the Loud House will get worse when Lori leaves home, but then again, I'm curious to what change the show is going to go through. Maybe the show will get worse or the show will get better. It all depends on the ending result. But I can definitely see why some people don't want this change for the Loud House, and I do worry for what's to come for the show because of it. Anyways, that's my piece of debate of change within some cartoons. What are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments. I hope you've enjoyed this video.